Hello, today we're going to complete the spam lab. So on the spam lab, you are going to create a form on your portfolio website for users to be able to enter their unique email address, first name and last name, and sign up for email updates on your website. I don't think there's going to be any email updates, but what we are going to do is use the email function to email them using that email address that they just entered. And so that's the big picture. As far as the details go, we're going to be using PDO to interface with our database. In terms of the significance of this assignment and the big picture, PDO is what this is all about. Oftentimes, your lab is a lot like your homework assignment. That's not exactly the case this week. I mean, it is a little bit. I just want you to understand that in order to complete your weekly assignment, you're going to have to watch the lecture and the PowerPoint videos because there's a couple pieces that are in your assignment that aren't here. However, you have all the pieces, so I'm not terribly concerned that you're not going to be able to put them together. Let me think, what else do I need to harp on here? So we're going to use PDO for everything. So in this lab, we're going to officially create your Connect script. It's going to be probably kind of painful. I don't know if you can remember what creating your first Connect script was like in MySQLi, but it went well for some people, and for other people it took an hour, and it always does. You think I'm talking to you, somebody, but I'm not. I've seen people not be able to get it in a 2-hour class, and I don't think that happened this year. So it might not go well, but it's going to be a Connect script. You can reuse it again and again. And to be clear about one thing before we get too carried away with this, I'm asking you to use PDO this week. I'm not asking you to use PDO on your final project. The other thing that I want to make clear is that this spam thing is going to go on your portfolio website. So I'm going to start off just doing some stuff that's not going to be relevant because I don't have a portfolio website that I'm putting this on. Email addresses have to be unique. We're going to use prepared statements. That's a PDO thing. We're going to email people. And one of the other things about this assignment it's going to hurt, is that we're going to make a privacy policy web page. And so this is another reusable piece. It's kind of, the scope of it is huge for a lab, considering it doesn't actually really have anything to do with PHP. But if we're going to be collecting information about users, it's about time we finally take some accountability for it and create a privacy policy statement. This is something that I've never emphasized before, but I always get on students for not doing it on their final projects, but hey, I guess let's model it here. And so in this lab today, you're going to create this and this. Those are reusable things that you can use going forward, so you can use them wherever you're going to use PDO. All right, that said, let's get started. So I am going to start by opening up this index. Now, this is going to go on your portfolio page. So your portfolio page should already be ripped apart into requires. So head, nav, foot. I'm just doing this from scratch. So the first thing I'm going to do is turn this into head, nav, foot. If you're sitting here watching this, you shouldn't be doing this because you should have already done this. If you haven't already done this on your portfolio website, well, now's the time to do it. So what I mean, you know what I mean. I'm going to say require head.php. Require foot.php. And then I'm going to take these things and I'm going to rip them into head and foot. So this goes down to here. I use keyboard shortcuts for that. If you're wondering how I do that so fast, I'll say it out loud this time. I select what I want. I Control X to cut, Control N for a new document, and Control V. X, N, V. That's what I do all the time. And then here it's Control S. I hate keyboard shortcuts, but that's a process that I do so often that I actually do it there. And okay, I was like, where the heck's my footer? I'll call that my foot. X, N, V, S. And let me drop the require in there. You notice when you're managing your files, it's kind of annoying. I like to put the index last, just because I'm not going to be touching these things again. And then I need my require. Oh, that's nav. And my foot's going to be at the bottom. We are 5 minutes in and legitimately have done nothing. If you already have these things done, which you should already have them done, we'll get going at some point. I'm going to run this, make sure that I got my requires right, because that's not a given. What in the heck does that mean? Oh, I know what that means. That's a good one. So I called this file OG index because I wanted to have a whatever. It doesn't matter why I did what I did. I got to change that path. Localhost. All right, there we go. So this is my home page. On your lab, you don't need to make a home page. You already have a home page, right? It's your home page. But what you are going to do is add something to your nav bar for sweet deals. I mean, I don't know, sign up for spam. I don't care what you call it. My idea that I'm trying to drive at here a little bit is if you're going to be collecting information from a user, privacy policy's a thing, and we kind of have talked about that already. But you need to make it clear why a user should consider giving you their information. That is your job to sell them on that. Oh gosh, I just broke everything. By changing that file, now nothing exists anymore. Oh my gosh. All right, fine. Open. Easy fix. I'm so confident I'm only going to open up my index. All right. So, I want to make this page called register. And so my nav bar points to something called register, I think. I can hover over it. It says insert, actually. You can see it down here. I guess, fine, let's edit my nav bar. This isn't going to be over with anytime soon anyways, so we might as well do it right. I'll call it spam.php. I'm going to bump that back. Here's my index. Reload my page. Big deal. Now it goes to spam. So I want to create this spam page. And what better thing to use as a template than my index? A, C, N, V, S. And I will call this spam.php. See how easy that is to use that as a template? This stuff is trash, sure. It's kind of hard to get rid of it because it's so long. I don't really want to view this because I don't think there's anything to view yet. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to create a form here. And forms need attributes, and we haven't done any of those, so I'm not too worried about it. And then right down here, I'm going to make a paragraph tag. And I'm just going to put a placeholder here so I don't forget to link to my privacy policy. Check out our privacy policy. This is one of the big outcomes of this assignment. Is you're going to create this privacy policy page. It's going to be kind of painful, but you're going to get to reuse it forever. And here's how we're going to use your information. Placeholders don't make any sense. So basically, this is going to be like, hey, we're collecting your. Fine, I'll just write this now. We are collecting your email address to send you the latest and greatest deals. But I don't know what your website's all about. I mean, you could be saying that this is to subscribe to updates to your portfolio, your resume, or something. I don't know what you're selling. It doesn't matter to me what you're selling, but you need to come up with something. If this is on your portfolio website, I'm not sure what this is supposed to say. I'm pretending this is some kind of a sales website. Your information will never be shared with any third parties. Alright, that wasn't the best typing. Fine. So something like that is one paragraph, and the other one is going to be a link to your privacy policy. So I'm just going to write that right now, and we'll fill it out later. So I just dropped anchor tags around it, and we'll call it privacy.php. And we'll deal with that last. But I want to put this here because I understand exactly how easy it is to blow that off and never deal with it. So this stuff is now here, and it's a placeholder more than anything else, but we will deal with it later. So let's take on that form. So forms need a method, and they need an action. You know this, even though you haven't done it in about a month now. So method, I'm going to go get action. You could do spam.php, or you could do the PHP thing, which is echoing out a reference to the server superglobal array, and the field that you want is PHP self. Now, is that easier than writing spam.php? Absolutely not, but there's a lot of times where this is going to pay off a little bit for you, so I do it, even though I probably don't need to. And then we're going to create our form fields. I'm going to go labels because I wrote, well, I guess, long story short, because I have CSS for them. So this is going to be first, and the input. If yours isn't styled up very well, like you're not doing labels, you don't have rules for your labels, I guess that's fine. The name is going to be first. I'm going to give it an ID. Now, you don't need an ID for PHP, but you do need an ID to bind a label to an input. And next week, we're going to start getting into JavaScript. And in the world of JavaScript, you darn sure want IDs. So while I kind of don't need that, I kind of do need it. It's not a terrible idea. I feel like I've already made mistakes. I guess I forgot to write that, but that's also the default, so it's kind of not. I'm going to duplicate. That's last. And then this is going to be email. And email. There is a type email. I think next week, it's either next week or the week after, where I'll start telling you why that's not such a great idea. I mean, you can do email, but here's my deal. If you want to do email, they're great. Here, your browser may or may not support it. The support for it's going to be non-standardized. The best way to actually validate those types is with JavaScript. We will learn how to do that soon enough. That's related to the idea of regular expressions. But just don't get attached to those fancy types. Sure, password's legit. Sometimes you need things like option select, but I think it's best to just assume everything's text and use JavaScript if you want it to be better than that. All right, so let's see how this looks. I don't know how it's going to look. I haven't tested it in a while. Okay, and just like every other time of my life, I forgot to do an input of type submit. I know it's kind of like the most important one, but it's also one I just take for granted, and I get it. I want sweet deals now. This is ridiculous. You should write something else. I'm not selling anything. All right, so there's our form. So we're 13 minutes in, and we haven't done anything too cool, but we did have to create this. Oh, actually, you know, I think this needs a, I'm gonna say it's a, I'm gonna put an H2 over it. So our call to action, sign up for radness here. I don't know if radness is a word. And I'll be honest, I don't care if it is or if it isn't. All right, so our form's created. So there's some overhead here, and now it's time to go do some PHP, right? So time for the fun stuff. It's a good idea to do this above your requires, just because sometimes you're going to be doing things like messing around with sessions or redirects, and that would have to come before that. So let's get into the good habit. All right, so let's create that connect script. So what do you want to call it? That doesn't matter to me. You could call it con or DBC or PDO. I like to call it PDO, or I don't like to call it DBC because we call them DBC in MySQLi, and so I kind of like to differentiate in terms of what I'm calling my variables. So equals new PDO. You did week 2 of the course, so you know what this is. That means you are creating an object of type PDO, and new means you're calling the constructor. Constructor needs at least 3 things passed to it. Each one of them is a string. The first one's the bad one, so that's going to be MySQL. And then I'm going to type a colon, then it's going to be host equals localhost semicolon DB name, name of your database. I have no idea what your database is called. I really don't. Oops. Right, it's old habits die hard. I'm trying to do backticks and stuff. Then it's going to be a colon. Then you're going to specify your char set. UTF-8 is what I'm going with. There are other options, more, I don't know, more widely accepted in 2020, but that's the one I know. I'll put in root because I'm working in XAMPP. No password because I'm working in XAMPP. So we are using PDO to connect to this database. It's the same database you've been using before, though. So just to be clear, you could be using the same database that you used in 133. This is just a different way of interfacing with your database. This isn't a PDO database. This is just a PDO connection to a database. Your database is probably pre-existing. This is going to be more difficult to get configured on your live web host, and your XAMPP should be configured like your live web host. So that's going to be more complicated. That's going to be more complicated. That's going to be more complicated. The rest of it is going to be the same. Now, if you're struggling to get this going, you should just open up your Connect script and just paste stuff right in there. Like, you could for sure go to your Connect script, paste whatever your database name is there, paste your username here, paste your password there. This is not, there's nothing unique about this. It's just a different method of going about it. Now, depending on what resources you've reviewed for the week, let's see how this goes. If it does nothing, I guess that's awesome. I want you to prove to yourself that nothing is awesome. Put a wrong password in there, reload it, and that's what a stack trace looks like. That is not okay. Notice our username and password are getting dumped in plain text. No good. So what we need to do here is wrap this in a TryCatch block. TryCatch blocks are for error handling. So when you are writing code that you know perfectly well might generate an error, you can write a TryCatch block to define how errors are handled. So here this is going to be PDO Exception. That is not negotiable. The variable name is, pretty much everyone calls them E, because oh my gosh, I don't know how to, what am I doing? I have no idea. It's getting worse. I don't know why I'm typing so many E's. I know you all say that you like to see the errors, but this is frustrating. All right, I don't know what I was doing. I think that's right. And then here I will say echo E, so name of my variable. Arrow operator, get message. So get message is a method of PDO exception. And so rather than have a wrong, so now when I have a wrong password here, rather than a stack trace, I get this, access denied for root using password. So it dumps the username but not the password. That is an error number that might be valuable at some point. Those mean something. And so we're not doing stack traces now. In my Connect video, I go a little more in depth, so I guess there's really no point in doing this further. But so you saw when I had a problem, I got this instead of a stack trace. And when just like every other Connect script, when things go right, nothing happens. So it's not very satisfying. You might remember when we made our first Connect scripts using MySQLi, we did an echo afterwards just to prove that getting past, line 3 meant things were going well. I'm telling you, getting past this tells you that you connected just fine. All right, so at this point you have created a Connect script. We're 20 minutes in. The interesting thing about this lab is there's a lot of cool things to it, but it's not very long. The worst parts are kind of sort of already done, with one exception. That exception is we need to create a table to store this spam information, and create table scripts are always kind of rough, so let's write that right now. So this is no different than it ever would have been any other time. So create table if not exists spam, or whatever you want to call it. I'm calling it spam because I'm saying that this is a table for spamming people. All right, and then we're just going to define our fields. So I'll say ID, that's an integer. I was spelling well up until I started this video. I guess I'm just burned out. Not null. Auto increment. And it's a primary key. All right, I think that's good. We're going to store first. So first varchar, I'll say that's 32. I'm sure some people's first names are longer than 32, but I don't know. I guess then make it 64. I don't know. Same conversation I have with you guys every other time. All right, last is going to be a varchar. I'll say that's 64. I'm sure there's longer names than 64, but I'm not trying to deal with that right now. I also want to make an email, and that is going to be a varchar. I think emails are pretty long, potentially, so I'll do 128. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a unique constraint on it. That is something that we are going to also have to address with a TryCatch block. So when you place a unique constraint on something, it enforces that that thing is unique. It's super useful. It's something we've been missing for months now in an introduction to PHP. The problem is that's going to throw an exception, and so we need to be able to handle that gracefully, and we will with a TryCatch block. All right, so that's our SQL. I don't know if it's going to work, but it might work. All right, so if all you want to do is execute a query, it's not too difficult in PDO. I'm going to create a variable called result, and I'm going to assign that the value that we get from using that database handle, and we're going to call this function or this method called query. Right? It is a function, but it's a method because it belongs to a class, and then we're just going to pass it the SQL. So that is a lot like in contrasting this with MySQLi, the old school approach would have just been MySQLi query, and then you would have passed it the DBC and the SQL. So there's a slide in the PowerPoint where I contrast these things. So many of the things that we do in PDO are direct. There's like a one-to-one relationship between the way you've done it before and the way you're doing it now. This is one of those times. Now, one of the strengths of PDO is prepared statements. The reason we're not doing a prepared statement here is there's no variables here. There's no SQL injection attack that's going to happen here. Now, does this work? Does this not work? I'll see in a minute. I have to go delete a table so I can actually run this script. I don't know if it's going to work or not. All right, so here's the moment of truth. I went and dropped my old table. I guess that's good. If nothing happens, I guess that's good. I'm going to go check and see if it got created. One of the things about PDO is it's harder to debug, and sometimes when things go horribly wrong, you won't know about it. I think this is actually one of those times. So there's one step I kind of forgot to do, which is kind of my bad, but you got to watch this whole video anyway, so I guess we're okay. So there's our connect. We had to wrap it in a TryCatch. I'm telling you, we also need to turn on exceptions. So I'll say PDO set attribute. There is also a way you can pass like a fourth argument up here and set attributes and do it that way too, but I like to use this method for it. So PDO :attttr. All right, I don't know how many T's I said. It's air mode, comma, PDO, : air mode, exception. Oh gosh. I haven't been spelling exception very well today. All right. So this mysterious line here turns on exceptions. What I'm telling you is even if this thing exploded and just didn't work, you wouldn't even know about it unless you turn that on. Now that that's on, now I can get something meaningful here. Fine, great, right? It worked. Let me show you what it would look like if it didn't work. Let's go create tablet, right? That's garbage. And now I get an exception. If I didn't have that set, I would not get an exception. So at this point, you should realize, oh, I guess that that is weird. You should realize that. You do not have the option of not having this on. Well, I mean, I guess you do, right? The default is silent mode where these things don't happen. But good luck, creating a successful application without turning that on. So you really have to turn that on. Otherwise, you're not going to know whether your SQL's busted or not. And I don't care how good you are at SQL, you're going to make mistakes. So you're going to want that on. All right, so my TryCatch block is now here. You see I've got it embedded in this file. I hope that the thought is already going through your mind, oh gee, should I take that out into a file called connect and put it up in a folder outside of the public directory called connect? Great idea. That's exactly what you should do with this. This should be a require. I'm just embedding it here because I want to walk you through creating one today. And I also understand you could get all kinds of hung up here. You certainly could. I've certainly seen it before. There's generally a person in class that has a very hard time getting a functional one of these. And all I can really tell you is that if you just copy and paste your credentials from your other Connect script into here, you'll be fine. All right, so at this point, we've created a Connect script, we've created our form, we've created the table, we've done a little bit of PDO. We're most of the way there, actually. It probably doesn't seem like we are, but we are. The next step is we're going to create an if block. So good old-fashioned if block, and this is going to be an is set. So this page has two statuses, if you will. I guess there's three technically, but we'll get to that later. It's got the, hey, first time I visit the website, nothing happening, right? Haven't submitted the form. And then we've got the state where you submit the form. We detect submission of a form the same way we always do with an is set in an if block. And we're going to look for $_get, square brackets, backticks in there, pick a field. I'm going to look for email because this is kind of largely about email, so I'll look for email. Of course, there's no validation happening here, and I'm quite all right with that because we're going to be doing a whole lot of validation in the coming weeks. So just enjoy the fact that you're not validating anything today. All right, and the inside of this is set block, I'm going to start creating some variables. I'll call this one first. I'll set that one equal to $_get, square bracket. First, this is a good candidate for duplication. So last. At this point, you might be wondering, what about MySQLi real escape string? Good question. I know no one asked. And I said you're wondering, and I also just called it a question. Sitting here talking to myself in my office, knowing people are going to watch this and probably asking questions, it's weird. It gets a little weird. All right, so no, you don't need to sanitize these because we're going to use what are called prepared statements. And prepared statements make it so we don't need to sanitize things. So MySQLi real escape string, forget about it. We don't need it. You're not doing anything wrong by not including it. On that note, all that MySQLi functionality that you know about, it doesn't mix with PDO. You need to make a choice. Am I going PDO or am I going MySQLi? I don't care what choices you use outside of week 3 of this class. Going forward, you should probably use MySQLi. That's generally my advice for folks because you're better at it. And if you're better at it, that means you can troubleshoot it. That means you're going to get more out of it and you're going to waste less time on it. I always have students who have a hard time getting a handle on PDO, and then they try and integrate it into their final project, and it ends up being just a giant time sink. So remember, we're on the island of PDO right now, but in the future, if you want to go back to the Isles of MySQLi, then go ahead, go there. All right. So, got my stuff. Now it's a matter of just some pure PDO prepared statements. So, let's write a prepared statement. This is pretty ugly the first few times you do it, but it's not so bad. I think I would tell you if it was. All right, so I'm going to write my SQL. I actually like writing the SQL better. It's the binding of parameters that's a little rough. So it's going to be insert into table name. Mine's called spam. I don't know what yours is called. Name of the fields, values. Right, so the name of the fields are going to be first, last, and email. Those correspond to those. One of the upsides to having a create table script, 10 lines away, as you can see it right there. And then the difference here is we're not going to put in first, last, and email. We're going to go question mark, question mark, question mark. that means that we are going to create a prepared statement out of this. So kind of what happens is this query gets built, fully built. The structure of it is predefined, and then we're going to bind variables where variables go. So in terms of a SQL injection attack, it doesn't matter if someone does a backtick. That backtick is not going to break the shape of this query. But anyways, if you are doing prepared statements, which I'm oftentimes asking you to do in PDO, your values are going to get set up like that. Now, there is another way to set up your values. I covered it in the PowerPoint, but I never use it. All right, so that's my SQL. And now I need to bind my parameters, kind of prepare the statement and bind my parameters. So result, this is going to be the result of what I get from everything I'm doing. So it's called PDO. I think it's called PDO. I've called it 10 different things today, so I'm really struggling with that. And we want to prepare this statement. And the statement we want to prepare is this SQL business. Right, so that isn't a straight one-to-one exactly with MySQLi. Now, do you notice that up here when we did this, we executed this query of creating this table, we didn't have to prepare it? It's because we weren't using prepared statements. There's no variables here. Preparing a statement is what you do when you are going to stitch in some variables. All right, the next part kind of hurts, and there's actually kind of a lot of ways that you can do this. I like just doing it like this in the beginning because it's explicit. So I'm going to call this method called bindParam. Right, I refer to it as a method because it belongs to a class. And so param1 is that thing called first. Right, so that's a reference to that. And 1 is a reference to the first question mark. In the PowerPoint, I showed you 3 different ways to bind parameters. There is one way where you can bind all the parameters in one shot, but I just think it's the hardest to look at. So I'm doing it very explicitly like this. I do feel like I'm wasting time when I bind 3 parameters separately like this, but it's also easy to see what's going on. So this seems like it's a lot more work right now, I think, but it's only because we're doing it like this. Oftentimes you're just putting in one value. Think about like a standard search where there's 1 or 2, right? I mean, it's a little easier. So prepare or build the statement, bind the parameters, and then the last part is going to be the execute that statement. And that should handle our insert unless it goes horribly wrong, which it might. So we're going to have to deal with that. If that seems kind of intimidating, this is kind of a tough one. For if this is the first one you've written, there's 3 variables in it. Let's see how this goes. I'm telling you right now, I refresh this page, nothing happens. You remember how this works. Well, you wrote it. You're going to need to actually put something in there. No, I believe not actually. Nothing actually gets evaluated. You're going to have to press that button. Email's bad. Mail. No, trash. The reason I was going to call it email because I'm lazy, but I know that the underlying form element is called name, so that would or email, so that'd be bad. I want sweet deals now, so now we're going to drop in an if block, and maybe it'll blow up on me. I actually don't know if it worked or not. I really don't. Downsides to PDO. I actually have to go to my spam table and see if that made it. I'm telling you, it did make it. Ken Banks is in there and he's trash. I mean, that's what it says. I guess I could yank that over here so you could see it. It's on my other screen, but you can see that it happened. I don't really want to do that, and again, but that's how I checked. Now, let me show you some interesting stuff. So let's make a mistake, like a column name that doesn't exist, like email with 2 L's. Run. I'm just refreshing. Oh, good. Okay, so I was actually thinking nothing would happen there, but I did get an exception. That's good. So unknown column email. Cool, kind of. But I also want to show you, you know that error reporting that exception mode that we turned on? Watch, if I turn that off, that goes away. So at this point, you should understand that that is crucial. And I'm not exactly sure why in this class I get a lot of students that don't have exceptions turned on, because I went right to it. In the overview, I talked about it since the minute we started doing this. But you have to have that. So make sure that that is in there, because otherwise you're going to have bad times debugging your stuff. All right, let me refresh this again. I'm hoping it blows up because I violate that unique constraint. Ah, perfect. Integrity constraint violation. So we got problems here. All right. So this is a good example of a TryCatch usage because you know that we're doing a simple insert which shouldn't cause any issues on its own, but because of this unique constraint, there's an error that we know very well we might get right here. So this is a good example of a place where I can use a TryCatch block, and it's going to be a little different than the way I used it for the connect script. So I know perfectly well that I might get some problems right around here because I've got this unique constraint, and since I imposed that unique constraint, I know perfectly well that I might get some errors here based on the email that's entered. So I'm going to try this. And I'm going to catch something here. Actually, if I wanted to be lazy, I could steal that whole thing. Fine, I won't be lazy. PDO Exception E. Echo E. Get message. Let's just see how this goes. All right, so integrity constraint violation. So rather than have a stack trace, which is what I would get without a TryCatch, I've actually done this so many times today that I don't remember if I showed you what it looks like without a TryCatch. Let me show you what it looks like without a TryCatch, because I actually am not confident that I have done that. So with a TryCatch, I got that, which I can kind of deal with. Without a TryCatch, I get an exception, and it just blows up my application. So this is really what TryCatches are for. They are to define the behavior of an exception as opposed to just living with what happens by default. So now that this is back in play, you see I get this, I get a specific message for this. And see how it's a 23,000? What I like to do here is, so I guess I guess this could blow up other ways, but we know that's a problem. So what I like to do is this. So if you want to look for a specific message, you can say if that. Oh, actually, it's like I don't remember what it's called. It's called like a error num or get code is what it's called. So that means pull the last code. If that's equal to 23,000, then that means that you have a bad email. I'll just show you. So rather than dump that error message, it served its purpose, which was telling us the error code. You see how now we can, well, in theory this would work. Oh yeah, lots of problems. That didn't work well. Oh yeah, I didn't echo it, of course. Well, the problem is I don't actually want to echo something here, so I'm like making that happen, right? So how do we handle this? All right, so I had to, just like every other time I do this, I've changed my mind about how I wanted to handle an error and, or where I want to display my output. So I had to delete things and kind of back up the train. So this might not fit together perfectly, but I'll do my best in post-production. So I don't want to echo something here. Instead of what I want to do is I'm going to create a variable. It's going to be a flag, and I'll call it submitted. And I'll start that off as false. So we will set that to true if the form is actually submitted, because there's kind of three states we got here, right? We got the one where the first time you visit the page, you're a new user, no feedback. You got I submitted the form, but I made a mistake on my email. That's state 2. And state 3 is I submitted the form and everything is good. So I'm going to use this variable to track whether this is in a submitted or unsubmitted form. In here, I will so I'll create an output string, and I'm going to initialize it to empty, and I'll say if you did this, then your output is going to be email is already taken. Try another email. And I guess how I'll do this is after that execute, I'll say out equals thanks for signing up for Wicked Awesome. I don't know. Yeah, whatever. Wicked deal's fine. I don't care. So you see what's going to happen here is this is kind of my default message once you've got this far, and if you end up throwing an exception, we're going to change that message to you got problems. And then what I want to do with that is display that somewhere. I'll display that in between the form and the H2 above the form, and I'll display this in an H2, which I guess is weird, but I'll do it. And so I'll say, and this is going to be a PHP block, so I guess to make this more readable, I'll write it like this. Open, close, echo, I think it's called out. So out starts off blank, so the first time a user visits this page, they don't drop into this is set, so they're not going to get anything out of that. If they have submitted the form, they're either going to get thanks or they're going to get some business about the email already been taken. If I refresh this, I now say email's already taken. Can stuff fast.net, right? This is new. This should be good. Sweet. Refresh. Not so sweet. And at this point, we are now gracefully handling an exception. So we're most of the way done here. As always, I spend way too much time trying to figure out how I want to communicate my output. There's a couple things left on our to-do list, though. One of those things is that we want to email our user confirmation saying, hey, thanks for doing this. Sending an email is very easy. We just want to call this mail function. Oh, and I just realized that I never used this submitted variable. So submitted equals true. Flip that, and then this is actually in an if. If submitted, sorry, this is long, so there's like almost no way it doesn't go like this. All right. All good. Let me reset this thing. I'm hoping, so the case I hadn't tested was that one, so I think we're good. All right, so where was I? I was at emailing this person. So where do we want to email them? Legitimately kind of difficult thing to figure out. So we could try mailing them here, and I guess that's fine. I'm honestly sitting here thinking about it. I think you might want to mail people even if it's a duplicate email. Maybe to indicate that that someone else was trying to register for your email, I think. Maybe. So I'll do it here, but I'm not quite sure where I would actually want to do it. So the syntax on this is the to, so the first, that's going to be a email. And then the next thing is the subject. So that's going to be like welcome to whatever. And then the last thing is the body. You'd want to do a good job with this, but I don't really want to do a good job with it. So I'm just going to say, hey there, whatever your first name is. So I'm saying you do need to customize it a little bit. Thanks for signing up for awesome deals. I don't know what this says. Now, here's the weird thing about this. I'm telling you that's probably going to work. I won't know if it's going to work or not anytime soon. because I'm running this locally in XAMPP, and in XAMPP my mail client's not configured. When you upload this to your web server, it will work. The other thing to mention about that is that these things oftentimes end up in a spam folder, so try sending it to a few different addresses. Syntactically, there's not a whole lot going on here. The email function can be complicated if you want it to be. Well, I mean, if there's other options you want to use, but that's really all there is to it. And if you're sure that you got it right, it probably does work. It's probably just getting caught in a spam filter. Spam filters are meant to block automated emails like this. And so even though this isn't really spam that should be getting picked up, it might be getting picked up. Most spam filters are going to recognize this as being questionable, so just have a look out for that. Now let me circle back and talk about what we have covered and what we haven't covered. All right, so we got a PDO Connect script. We got a form. We created a table using PDO. We determined if the form was submitted, determined if the email was unique. We inserted a row. We did an email confirmation. And all that leaves us with is our privacy statement. All we have left to do is create a privacy policy statement. So this is that document that we referenced down here. So you have a reference to it. So let's go create it. And what I'm going to do before I do that is take that index page, which is just what it requires, ACNVS, right? I was going to select all, copy, new document, paste, save. And this is called privacy.php. And I'm going to get rid of that again, right? This is just a template page for my site. And so here is where I'm going to put my privacy policy. So I'm going to walk you through this here. And so what I recommend for this is in Blackboard, I gave you a link to something called How to Write an Effective Privacy Statement. And I'm going to pull this over here, and we'll look at it together and talk about it a little bit. So pop it right here. All right, so this is written by UC Berkeley. What I'm going to do is, so there's this nice explanation of things here. Down here near the bottom, there's this, if your website collects analytics or other personal information, use this sample privacy statement. This is a Word document, so I'm going to select all, copy. And what I did is I took that information, and I'm dumping that here between these two content tags. And here, yuck, right? Not too nice looking, but whatever. There's not a whole lot we can do about it. Like I said, this is going to be kind of brutal, but we're going to do this right one time, and then you can use it every other time you need it. All right, so I'm going to edit this with you. This is garbage. All the square brackets are garbage. So I don't know what your website's called. You'd need to alter this as needed. So I am whatever your website is. Okay, fine. Now the formatting on this is going to be ridiculous. So you need to wrap these paragraphs in paragraph tags, which hurts. I know. I don't like doing it any more than you do. Information collected. I'm going to make that an H2. So you can see what I'm doing here. Like, this is tedious, and this also reminds me that I need a heading. Heading 2 for my privacy policy heading. I know what I just did. Don't worry, I'll fix it. I'm just getting concerned that this video is going to be an hour, but hey, I guess it is. We do not use analytics, so I can get rid of that. We do associate information with identities, so I'm getting rid of that. We're not using CalNet authentication. We do use forms, though, so the part of this that's relevant to us is coming up. All right. I'm going to actually, so this is garbage. That's just explanation. Cookies. So you know perfectly well what we're doing right now doesn't use cookies, but you also probably know that you are maybe going to use cookies later on. So I'll just say this site. I don't know. Do you plan to use cookies? if you might, I mean, you might. It's something we've used in the past, so I'm just going to leave that here. Web forms, this is kind of our, oh, actually, I can't. These all need to be paragraphs. I know this is brutal. I know it doesn't look right if it's not. This is an H2 as well. We do use web forms. We're using one right now, so this is particularly relevant to us. You list information collected. First name, last name, email. I don't know, right? Whatever you collect. There's other parts on your site that collect more stuff. So I don't really think it's particularly smart, honestly, to just write it around this simple spam application. It'd be smarter to use this more generally for everything you might do on your site. That's an H2. Blah, blah, blah. That everything in square brackets is garbage. This website. That's a paragraph. I know it hurts me. I don't think that's actually applicable to us. We don't use browser and IP address. If you do, you might. We're not doing CalNet. Distribution of collect information, that's going to be an H2. So you see there's a bunch of headings here and a bunch of paragraphs. This site. You notice I'm just putting opening P tags. You'll see what I'm doing soon. It's not the first time I've done something like this, so I kind of have the ways I do it. This right. Privacy revisions, that's going to be an H2. If I can see the end of the paragraph, then I will close it. Let's just say that. I just know I can't see most of them, so I won't. This was updated on, I'd put in today's date. Right. Responsibility of external sites, that's an H2. You see, this is a lot of work, but you don't need my help for this. You could have done this on your own. I'm just doing it because why not? You know, I mean, it's a lab. I've done everything else with you. I might as well go a little bit farther. How to contact us, that's an H2. This is actually really important, I would say. You should this is actually garbage. This is not UC Berkeley stuff, but what I want to do here is, gosh, it's hard to get at this. Okay, fine, I'm just going to delete this whole line. I'm going to write my own paragraph. Last one's going to be a custom paragraph. If you have questions, then please contact the site administrator at email, right? And put your email address there. And now all I've got to do now is go close off all these annoying paragraphs that, well, actually, at this point, I also might as well acknowledge that if you had word wrap on, my life would be easier right now. But I hate word wrap when I'm programming, so I'm not going to turn it on. I'll just deal with this. This is a manual process. You will figure out real quick if you don't close something, I think. When you go to look at it, it'll look terrible, so don't feel like you have to get this perfect on your first attempt, because you might not. And let's see how that goes. Well, I have to tab those in. Save, and now, not there, but here, I go to privacy policy, and I don't know, I think that looks okay. There you go. I guess. Pretty good. Kind of. So that was tough, but I didn't edit that at all, and I did it in 8 minutes. So the coolest things about this assignment, I think, with privacy policy, well, that was anything but cool, but it was overdue, I guess. We created a Connect script. We set it up properly. We used PDO to do a prepared statement. We did a TryCatch looking at the specific exception. And that was about it. I just mentioned that because it seems like we probably did a ton of things, and we did do a handful of new things, but uh, we didn't actually do that much. So at this point, I think you're set up pretty well for your assignment for the week. So on your assignment for the week, you're going to do something kind of similar, with the exception of rather than just storing the email and sending them an email, you are going to store an email. You're going to send them an email. You're going to have similar exception handling. A lot of this is going to be the same. The difference is that you're going to need to store a username and a password. And so for that username and password, I'm asking you to use the password verify function simply to make your life easier. You certainly haven't used that function, at least under my watchful eye. So just watch the YouTube video on it. And I also go over it in the PowerPoint, which you should already know about. The reason we're using that function is just to make your life easier. The scope of this is huge. I introduced quite a few major things here, and so that's why I'm asking you to use that password verify, because I don't want to go back through salting and hashing with you. So the difference between this and your assignment is kind of that. I think that makes sense. All right, so hopefully you found this helpful, and thanks for watching.